I provided 3 copies over there. Apparently they've been going, but we'll give you a copy here.
Okay, it's 1:30. We'll call the December meeting of the Cultural Resources Review Board to order. We have a quorum, and we'll go on to general public comment for items not in the agenda, 3 minutes per speaker. General public comments. We have one general public comment.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. My name is Ed Slavin, staugustgreen.com. I sent the board members and the chair an email this afternoon requesting some items for the agenda. First of all, the growth management directors using material false statements to pressure St. Johns County Cultural Resources Coordinator, Mr. Trey Asner, to resign. Second, the county's massive resistance to compliance with Florida whistleblower law. Third, the county's neglect and destitute of protection of significant cultural resources, including civil rights, African American, and Hastings history. And I've asked in the email for y'all to ask questions and demand answers today concerning the Hastings High School feasibility study and why, for so long, 963 days was it, y'all were kept in the dark. And there were how many meetings of the CRRB went by? 16 of them. And apparently Ms. Brewer shared the report with Mr. Asner, and he was told that it was to be kept in-house. And that's wrong. And secrecy is wrong. And that's contrary to the dignity of the free people. Also, questions concerning Trey Asner's employee evaluation. The fact is that Ms. Brewer and Mr. Mouch questioned his interactions with the CRRB. I'd ask the CRRB to please ask Ms. Brewer and Mr. Mouch exactly what they meant by that. And second, they said that Trey had been told on multiple occasions on how to handle significant cultural resource designations, and there seems to have been a misunderstanding on this issue that needs to be addressed. What was that misunderstanding? I think we have a case here of a retaliatory demand that Mr. Asner resign, and I've got 10 big questions for y'all, and they're in the email. And I hope that y'all will address them and ask the staff to address them, and question why it was that the growth management director, Mike Roberson, pressured Mr. Asner to resign, forced resignation. There was never a proper exit interview by the HR, and in fact, as I understand it, the last 4 cultural resources coordinators were run off in much the same way. So pretty much we're looking here at a pattern and practice of intentional employment discrimination. Ms. Brewer, you can look at it when I talk. Intentional employment discrimination against persons who want to do their job. In the language of the McCauley Act case versus University Nuclear Systems, Inc., people who do their job too well around here get run off. And the public is treated disdainfully and disrespectfully, as I have been treated this afternoon. And it's unacceptable. And I'd like to ask the CRRB to request that the county attorney and the county administrator meet with Mr. Asner to work in good faith to resolve the issue. And I'd like to see that the pertinent records on Mr. Asner and the Camrite House and Hastings High School cover-ups are provided at once. This board has been disrespected and kept in the dark for too long. And these cultural resources and the protection of the employees is a very urgent matter. And the retaliation, in the words of Abraham Lincoln, idolatry that practices human sacrifice.
We have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Please request that all persons with knowledge on these issues go forward and be heard in the public
That's
session
3 minutes.
at a hearing to be televised on the GTV. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And
Thank you.
no other public comments.
Any response from the staff?
We'll go on
Ms.
to
Brewer?
the minutes.
Ms. Brewer, any response? Mr. Chairman, would you ask Ms. Brewer if she would like to respond?
Minutes of the
Please spread
August
my
and
email on
October
the
meetings.
Thank you.
Do we have any concerns or questions about the minutes of the August and October meetings? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from that those two meetings?
So moved.
Motion made to approve the minutes of the August and October meetings. Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, the current agenda, we don't need do we need a formal action to approve the current agenda or not? Or do we just ask if there's any additions?
Or
Any
deletions.
additions to the current agenda? Okay, then we'll proceed with item number 1. The consultants that have completed the historic A1A survey.
Okay, Dana Kress, if you're still with us on the line?
I sure am. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, I'm Dana Kress. I'm Senior Architectural Historian at GAI Consultants. I've conducted several surveys and nominations for large-scale historic resource surveys and historic districts during my time here at GAI. In March of this year, I and my coworker, Aaron Swickard, surveyed historic and architectural resources that are 45 years old or older along the original State Route A1A in St. Johns County, ranging from Volano Beach to Ponte Vedra Beach. Due to the project description, we restricted our survey to properties adjacent to the A1A, Ponte Vedra Boulevard, and Volano Road, occasionally extending the survey up to 1 block away from the roadway to account for some properties within that historic range that are within view of that historic route. So just a little background, I guess, construction on the present-day State Route A1A began in the 1920s during Florida's land boom. The road originally extended from Jacksonville Beach to Volano Beach, with the North River Bridge connecting Volano Beach and St. Augustine being constructed in 1927. Prior to the construction of this thoroughfare, present-day Volano Beach was reached via ferry and used as a beach attraction, primarily for affluent resort guests staying in St. Augustine during the turn of the 20th century. Meanwhile, Ponte Vedra Beach was a mining site with worker housing during the same period. The rising value of land in Florida during the 1920s, coupled with the construction of the road that would become the A1A, resulted in the development of both areas as tourist destinations. This economic and developmental transformation of the area would continue into the mid-20th century as the roadway was renumbered and realigned in the 1940s, then becoming known as A1A. The survey as a whole contains resources ranging from 1925 to 1977, representing the area's changing physical and economic landscape over the course of these several decades. The survey area illustrates patterns of developmental growth, including the land boom of the 1920s and the post-World War II era. Once comprised of isolated beaches and brackish marshes, the area rapidly developed during the 20th century with these two distinctive communities at the north and south ends of the survey area. During the process of the survey, we documented 321 resources. Of these, 153 were previously recorded with the State Historic Preservation Office, meaning that they've already had documentation done, and we updated those. Of those previously recorded resources, 57 have been demolished since their original documentation. So we made sure that the State Historic Preservation Office had those up-to-date documentation of the current built environment. The remaining 168 resources were newly documented with the State Historic Preservation Office as a result of this survey. Older resources dating from the 1950s and prior are largely confined to Ponte Vedra Beach and Volano Beach proper, with properties built in the 1960s and 1970s serving as infill within these communities and expanding housing development along the State Route A1A between the two towns. Construction outside of the town limits is largely concentrated along the beach, lining the oceanfront on the east side of the road, with the wildlife management area located on the west side of the road. Architectural styles range from early to late 20th century. These include craftsmen, colonial and Georgian revival, Spanish colonial revival, Mediterranean revival, streamlined modern, modern movement, contemporary, minimal traditional branch, and split levels. So you kind of get a range of this early 20th century to mid-late 20th century, as well as several frame and masonry vernacular resources. The most diverse area of architectural styles was found in Pontevedra Beach. The community primarily contains more affluent dwellings from the 1930s through the latter part of the 20th century. However, many of Pontevedra's previously recorded resources, particularly those associated with the early and mid-20th century, are no longer extant or have been replaced with larger modern dwellings. Extant dwellings from the historic period tend to be heavily modified with modern additions and modern materials. Therefore, resources within Pontevedra Beach study area are recommended as not individually eligible or contributing, largely contributing to a potential historic district just because of these modern modifications. The results of the survey did recommend 43 resources contributing to a potential historic district located in Volano Beach, and 5 resources recommended as individually eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. 1 resource is recommended as both contributing to the historic district and individually eligible. Most of these resources are recommended individually eligible are based on criterion A related to a historical event or theme, or criterion C for architectural significance. 1 resource is recommended individually eligible based on criterion B for being significant to a individual, which would be Forrester Allen Neath. The 43 resources recommended eligible as part of a historic district are recommended under criterion A for the development of Volano Beach. The community of Volano Beach at the south end of the survey area was initially developed at the turn of the 20th century as a beach destination. In 1926, the town was formally platted and construction began on the Volano Beach Casino. While the Great Depression effectively ended this period of prosperity both locally and statewide, in addition to several severe storms ultimately destroying the resort, the presence of State Route A1A with the rising popularity of the automobile in the years surrounding World War II attracted new development to the area. During the post-World War II period, a collection of 1-story motor hotels, commercial establishments, and private beach cottages were constructed along and adjacent to State Route A1A. While commercial development slowed during the late 20th century, and then A1A was ultimately rerouted away from the historic alignment along Volano Beach's commercial core, several resources from this mid-20th century construction boom are extant, providing a tangible link to the significant period of the region's history. This reconnaissance level survey of State Route A1A conducted as part of the study recommends the creation of potential historic district within Volano Beach area, encompassing both commercial and residential resources. These resources retain sufficient integrity to convey their significance to this tourism-based economy of the region during the mid-20th century.
Okay, are we ready for questions? Could you? Oh, are you? I'm sorry. We don't want to interrupt you. Are you proceeding? With,
oh, yep. I was going to say I'm open to questions. Yep. Anyone, if anyone has any.
Can you display, or is it possible to display the recommended historic district with the 43 structures, the boundaries of it? Is that available?
I believe the boundaries are within the mapping that we provided in the report. Yes, but it's only restricted to the properties along the A1A that we surveyed. So like we're recommending it to be kind of expanded throughout the community proper rather than being restricted to community or restricted to properties along the A1A.
It's the very bottom one. Keep going.
So your recommendation is to expand the survey in that area where the 43 were?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Expand the survey?
So she's saying, because they only did A1A, she said that there's more probably potential structures that could be in this potential historic district, but they were only tasked with the A1A.
Oh,
So
what,
she's
yeah,
recommending.
yeah, well, yeah, wow.
So
okay.
likely
What
south of
was this?
Volano Road and west of State Route A1A within
Okay,
the
so
community.
this survey did not cover the Volano Road area, is that correct? Because A1A does not
So
pass through.
Volano Road is in that little red boundary you see.
Ryan, it's figure 10 at the end.
Figure 10?
Yeah,
Okay.
10 and 11, I think.
Yeah, pages
figure
or
10.
sheets
Oh, yeah.
19 and 20, I think, show the best
Back up to
of
the
that
top
area.
of that image.
It's
Figure
way
10.
down, it's,
Oh.
We did capture Villano Road simply because that's the historic alignment of State Route A1A. We did not do the bypasses or like the
Okay,
reroute
so you
of the
did-
new bridge or along like Sawgrass.
I guess a fun, basic question, anyone, the 43 structures that make up the identified potential historic district, are they along, does that include a district that encompasses the Volano Road area?
Yes, many of those are along Villano Road within our survey area.
How far south of Volano Road did the survey go? Does it include any of the residential immediately south of the Volano Road area?
We did not go far into south. I think we got maybe one or two properties along. Trying to see what this road. Sorry, trying to zoom in on my own. Along Barrel Road, I think we got one or two residential, but we kept it primarily to those adjacent to Volano Road.
Okay, so I guess we're looking at the area for a potential district designation with the 43 properties. Were there any individually listed, were any of the 5 individually listed, potentially individually listed structures in the potential historic district?
There is one that overlaps between being individually eligible and within the historic district.
Could you list the 5 since it's only 5?
Yes, I will do a quick search here.
page 48, Ryan. Okay.
You printed that whole thing?
No, just this part.
Like, that was a lot. That's too many pages
Sorry.
to
Because I
print.
couldn't.
You've done the homework, you know.
There we go. Yep.
I didn't
So we
print
have
Page 48 of the report.
Yeah,
Here, this one.
we have the Nice House,
everything.
there it is.
Casa Benedetto's, Lloyd House, Searcy House, and Volano Beach House.
Down more? Gotcha.
Okay, there's the back up, because I think you had the chart that had the individually
Yeah,
listed.
oh, yeah, that's the one, that table has.
Okay, these are the 5 that
Yep.
are the survey has recommended are eligible for individually listed.
And the one on Volano Road, SJ03939, is both recommended within the historic district and individually eligible.
Okay, okay.
And then the next one shows the ones that are contributing.
So the Ponte Vedra Boulevard one must be further north then. Is that the Searcy house? Searcy? Searcy? Is that?
Yes, and I believe that's the only one in the Ponte Vedra area.
Okay, okay. That's interesting. Okay. 1953, okay.
Hey.
Branch. Anything else that we need to learn that's fundamental to this study, of this survey?
May I comment?
Go ahead.
I'm listed as number 3, but what I'm talking about relates directly to this, if you want to keep the train of
Well,
thought.
yeah, maybe we should. So let's just see if the board has any more questions, and then I guess we can ask for comments on this and questions.
Well, what we might want to do, since we do have someone on the phone, is if you have no more questions for this individual, we'll thank her for her business today, then I would suggest, as a group, if you want to move the items around and hear item 3 next, then we could certainly do that and take comments
Oh,
on
okay.
both 1 and 3 at the same time.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
I guess, well, let's see if there's any more questions. I have one more question for the consultant. Did you think the boundaries were, did the boundaries include what you felt was encompassing of the historic structure resources in this general area, or were the boundaries maybe a little too tightly drawn for the survey in a couple of cases? And the one case that's occurred to me is the Sinclair Lewis, is it the Sinclair Lewis
Yeah.
house? That is really in its original interior and exterior is pretty much in its original state and has both, let's see, architectural, seems to have both architectural and cultural importance. Did you, I guess, I don't know what my question exactly is.
I think scope of the project was trying to investigate what the development of State Route A1A was, and I think for the purpose of the project, I think the survey was pretty aptly drawn and confined to studying that survey question as to how development along State Route A1A transpired through the 20th century. So I think that was pretty telling between these, looking at these two communities and how structures in between them developed and how the communities themselves changed over the years, mostly due because of the, because of this road and access through vehicular travel. I think my recommendations is just that there might be additional studies available that are a bit more honed in based on this kind of more broader expanse of a survey.
Okay, one quick more question then. Archaeological resources, you did not look into archaeological resources, and in particular...
We did not, no.
There was an actual trolley that served parts of Volano Beach that went up to Euclid, I believe.
It's right beside it, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's something that might need to be further looked into from an archaeological standpoint.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Anyone have any other questions? Okay, I guess not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Dana.
Nice study.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, goodbye.
Okay, so we can move to item 3 and skip over 2 for the time being.
I'll bring my notepad in case you have any questions. And Ryan's got my presentation. I did make a few hard copies, and I think I made 12, so I've got enough for the staff and a few extras. I'll just
You want me to hand those out, Sally?
You would. Just pass them around as far as they go.
Okay. Did you want to keep the A1A survey up, or?
No,
Okay. Let's see if
just
I
the
can
PowerPoint.
find this here.
Mine's a much simpler version. PowerPoint.
The first one?
No, the second.
This one? Okay.
That's
that's it. Okay, I have been attending the meetings on a pretty regular basis for the last year or so, and prior to that. I'm Sally O'Hara, the Volana Beach Main Street Executive Director currently. And I've been in this position since, golly, too long, 2012. And I'm well familiar with the properties along the A1A corridor as well as the Volana Beach Main Street area. I'm a co-author of this particular document, which is the historic documentation of the Volana Beach area that we created back in 2015. And what I wanted to do today is just give you a quick visual of, what it was then, what it is now, and what some issues are. So if you want to bring up the slideshow. And all right, we are now in our 20th anniversary season in 2023. We were designated as a Florida Main Street community back in 2003. So we've completed 20 years, and of that, it took us through visioning for redevelopment along the Volano corridor and county supplemental funding from Waterfronts Florida, from Main Street, from the county resources, Parks and Recs, and so forth. So as we've grown, a lot of things have changed, and if you haven't been to the area in a while, you know it looks drastically different. You want to advance? So you were talking about the map of what was in the historic district. This is your Volano Beach boundaries for the Volana Beach Main Street. This is the boundaries for the CRA, and this is in this. And there are other properties that go up along the A1A corridor that are not included in some off-parcel roads, like, as you were saying, Surfside, and properties along Oak, and some over on the beach side were not included in the particular survey. And I understand the restrictions of RFPs and competitive bidding, and you have to be very specific and distinct in identifying the properties. So they reviewed 321 properties. Now, what we have going on now is, because we've been in existence for 20 years, Volana Beach Main Street has been very successful in developing properties and getting investments in the community and returning our investment to the county through the CRA dollars in return. What's happening, though, is that the economic development is outrunning the historic preservation component. And if somebody doesn't take a look at it real soon, the only thing left in Volano that will reflect the ambience of the area will be the book, because the properties are being destroyed. You want to advance? Or?
Sure.
Okay, so just recently, we did have 23 acres. It was expanded 2 years ago when they were trying to put the Volana Hotel in, and this area was expanded into the town center, Main Street District. So this is the area of focus for the historic district. And it is specifically regulated through the county and our overlay district on the type of structures that are included. And we do have design review guidelines that retain the character and ambience of the historic preservation in the vernacular style and the right architectural style. So we have hotels, residential, retail, and civic. And I track this and report to Tallahassee on a quarterly basis. And whenever new structures come in and are demolished or want to be placed in the town center, there is a formal county structured design review board that reviews this, as you know. So the only structure now that we were able to get identified as culturally significant is the Magic Beach. And we did that when they tried to expand and put that large structure there. So The reason the developers left the town and abandoned the project is because the culturally significant designation. And during those discussions with boards of various levels, one of the elements that was identified is that a Main Street community is not a historic district. And that is true. They're not one and the same. However, we've been working to achieve that for 2 decades. And in 2019, we actually got the DRB to approve our topper signs on Volano Road. You know, you go down to Lincolnville, you go down to uptown St. Augustine, and on top of the street sign it says a special sign. It's identifying the historic district or the neighborhood district. We have that, but since Volano Beach Main Street is so woefully underfunded and has been for 20 years, we never had money to put those sign toppers on Volano Road. So the public really doesn't know without a lot of aggressive communication, passing out literature, and teaching people about what a Main Street community is. So we do have that process ongoing. So just a walk through memory lane. This is the property on Volano Road that is 155 and 145 Volano Road. It used to be the old post office building, and now it's going to be Breakwater Villa. And it will be quite different than it is now. In 2012, we put Publix in, and in the process of doing that, we took buildings out on the corner of Coastal Highway to have public regulatory components. We put parks in. We've got the nature boardwalk. We've got the pier and the beach pavilion. Go ahead. So in 1995, of course, the bridge came and that dried up Volano Beach. And I think everybody knows that particular story. And we got a lot of public funding from various sundry sources, okay? And one of the things that before the last coordinator left his position, I had begun discussions with him on trying to identify other culturally significant properties and things in the Volano Beach area that we could salvage and save before these land properties flipped and we didn't have any interest in historic preservation. And 2 of the ideas was to save the bluebird. And he had indicated, Asner had indicated that we could identify it as a culturally significant resource. And I had submitted to the board on a couple of occasions previously that request. The last month I had submitted that request. So at a minimum, we would like to have the bluebird as culturally significant. Go ahead.
It's, I guess, technically owned by the county since it's on the county-owned pier?
Yes, and the
Okay.
community paid for its restoration by raising about $5 grand.
Okay.
And we had the assistance of County Parks and Rec from relocating it from its holding position onto the pier where it is now. Okay? Another culturally significant prospect is the Haley Goose Court sign. Right now, that property is probably going to flip to short-term rentals or another use. It's kind of on a iffy situation as to whether it's going to be done that way or not. But back in the early days of the infrastructure repair, the county did place a sign in front of Haley's Court to identify it as a property that was of the 1950s motor court style. So that sign, this is what it looks like today. You can't read it. And this is the actual sign that used to be in front of the motor court. Go ahead. So this is more of Haley's Court, and again, the old and the new. This is was taken probably about 10 years ago. It was more readable then, but now it's not. So that's one thing that we would like county assistance with. Another one is, of course, Magic Beach, and everybody is kind of familiar with the Magic Beach story. It was recently sold in May to new owners, and they have decided to retain the character, and they're doing a good job. So they haven't changed anything, and it's going to be a nice little addition to the community. As a matter of fact, has attracted the Netflix series that came there in August because of its historic ambiance, and that's what we were desiring to say. Go ahead. Other properties like Breakwater Villa, this is what it's going to look like, and day after tomorrow we have another DRB meeting on the design and scope of the building. But the whole property is empty. That used to be the post office, it used to be the Village Inn, little 1950s motor court. And in the process also, the fountain that we put there for infrastructure needs at the corner of Vivian Browning Way and Volano, that I had written a grant to display the 10 tiles, and they were done by the DMB school, on the history of Volano taken from this book. So those are now at the Gateway Monument as you enter the town center. But this whole structure is gone. I mean, it's not yet totally gone, but it's disassembled and it will be gone. So, go ahead. Then we have the old Barangados, and that property is recently flipped again. They have new owners, and I don't know what, the prospects may be. But from a truly National Historic level, it really doesn't have all that much value to be designated individually, but within the district, these structures all characterize that 1950s motor court style. And one by one, they're going out the door. Okay? Go ahead. Then you have Haley's Pub. It's still there, but it's sold, and it will go out the door too. It may be raised because I don't think structurally it's salvageable, but again, there's no historical significance per se, other than the fact that it's the community history. Go ahead. We have 180 Old Benito's, and that's 180 Grill. That was saved. So it is retained as it pretty much was, and Matt is expanding a backyard court now, and he expanded his parking area last year as well. And that's going to be heard at the DRB on Wednesday. Go ahead. We have the video store. It's used for storage now, and despite our efforts to salvage it and use it for a community resource space, historic gathering point, the current owners are in a holding pattern for what they're going to do with their properties, because that's waterfront, beachfront property. It's beaches at Volano.
What was the original use of that? I'm sure it predates videos.
Yes. It was just a
The commercial structure?
yeah. It was pretty much used for that kind of thing prior to that. So it's 1950s. But technically it's not digital, it's not videos and stuff, but commonly referred to as the video store, 200 Volano. And then there are the other structures, which include Fiddler's Green, that's gone, and the trailer parks and Lazy Sands, the old Shears of Volano Beach, that's raised and out of the window, and of course the cleaners and so forth. Go ahead. And now we've got the Holiday Inn Express, we've got the Hyatt, and they have brought businesses, which is good. And they are within the design standards. but there's no history there. There's no structure there. Extended stay was removed and so forth. So if you ride down Volana Road, you're going to see these high-rise structures, and then on further toward the pier, you're going to see these low squat buildings that kind of looked out of character. And that's one thing that Mr. Weaver had argued in one of your meetings, that there was no continuity or historic district, if you will, for Volano Beach. Well, yeah, we're developing it. And we're trying to make it economically viable to develop the properties. So basically, what I'm here today to try to convey to you is that we need your help as a cultural review board and staff to, number one, save the signage, the Bluebird and Haley's Court, and also help us educate the public on the value of our area. And yes, we do need resources for an expanded survey to include the Sinclair Lewis house, to include houses along Farrell Road, which are on the residential side outside of the boundary. And those were there when August Heckscher came to town and platted the place in 1927. So some of those structures have been modified, but again, it's the historic district that is of value, culturally significant value. And a lot of our properties along the beach side are being converted to short-term rentals. And in the survey, 57 properties along the A1A corridor have been demolished since the last survey. And I was involved in reviewing some of that information too. And it's kind of sad that they come and they go so easily. So we just are wanting to bring the board in our same mentality to support the economic development, but also be able to support identifying the district as a historic district so that we can salvage some of these properties. It kind of slows the fast and furious developers down a little bit. That's all.
Is the Haley's sign within the public right-of-way now?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so then.
And the county paid,
doesn't-
the county paid for that historic sign back in the early part of the development of the town
Okay.
center.
So there shouldn't be, that should be a no-brainer for the path forward on designation of those two elements.
I would hope not. I would hope not. It's pretty easy to document, so it's up to the board whether you want to endorse it or not. And we can get staff direction as far as to the procedures for that particular exercise, but yeah.
Did you want me to speak on that?
Oh, yeah. if you-
As the land development code is written, county staff may designate something as significant cultural resource. That's how the Magic Beach Motel was designated. Staff identified it as a significant cultural resource. Now, certainly, you've had a presentation here now from Sally, and she's requesting the two signs be considered. The board, the code does read as well that you, the board, have the ability to designate something as significant cultural resource. So both staff and this board can do it. It doesn't just strictly have to be the board, and it doesn't strictly have to be just staff.
Okay.
And in the code, it does have the requirements to be a significant cultural resource. You have to meet, certain
Three.
elements.
3 of 7 or something like that.
Right. And then you meet
Yeah,
one of
so the
those,
only-
and then,
Yeah, the only action that this board has taken recently with regards to this area was this board acted on the Volano Beach Motel.
Right.
and the reason that was, staff had already designated it as a significant cultural resource. The owner countered with their own consultant that provided a document that said it was not.
Okay.
That's why we brought this to the
Okay.
board as to individuals to weigh both issues and decide which is correct.
Okay.
So in your opinion, as I assume the county staff at this point, would you say that these two meet the requirements?
I think from what I
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
now, of course, that they would meet the requirements of a significant cultural resource.
Okay.
I have a question. So what is the difference between a landmark and a culturally significant property?
We call it a significant cultural resource, and that is a definition for St. Johns County alone. I think some other areas in Florida may use that similar terminology. But again, in the Land Development Code, if you have the code in front of you, it provides the definition, and then it provides certain elements that must be there for you to designate it as significant cultural resource. Once that happens, if you want to impact that significant cultural resource, you have to do a cultural resource management plan. And that management plan has to be developed, and then that management plan would come to you, the Cultural Resource Review Board, for review. Part of that management plan would provide mitigation alternatives, strategies, that sort of thing. It would not prevent that resource from being impacted. But you as the board would then, could respond to that cultural resource management plan, ask the applicant, if they have other options, that sort of thing. It does allow for the delay of a demolition for up to a year to try to strategize on how to save that significant cultural resource. But at the end of the day, the owner still has owner rights.
Right.
Now, landmark would be an element above that.
Got it.
And it can be a national landmark, or it can be just St. Johns County landmark. And we do have a landmarking process as well.
Yeah.
But again, at the end of the day, the owner still has owner rights for their properties.
And if it was a historic district, if the board recommended it be a historic district, that would add a little oomph for getting funding for other things for the Main Street community and neighborhoods.
So we have the survey, and we've spent, is there anything, are you suggesting that other actions should be scheduled to proceed at the, in
Yeah,
order to
you know.
preserve the cultural heritage of this area?
Well, I have been tasked from my state coordinator to update the inventory. And this is the listing that she had given me back after the first hurricane back in September. And I haven't done it because I knew this inventory was imminent. So before before the year is out, I'll update the state master files at the Florida Main Street record level. And some of these properties actually are outside of our boundaries. So they've got some errors, and we didn't include everything in ours. So it's a matter of ongoing corrections as we move forward. So go ahead, next slide. So what I would like to do is to get some sort of support from the board in educating the community and being proactive with communicating the need for the designation. Economically, it's a very good investment in the community to retain the ambience of the Main Street corridor and neighborhoods that surround it without demolishing anything. The protections provided by the historic district would help. It's not going to stop because private property reigns, and we know that. But it will slow things down, at least to have it in compliance with our design characteristics of what we want the community to look like. We do have design guidelines. In the Volano Beach Town Center, as well as the A1A corridor. We've got overlay districts all up and down St. John's for that. But if we don't do anything and don't discuss it, it's going to be wide open.
So which actions are front burner? Say we want to pick it.
All right, I want the signage to be culturally designated. That's the Haley's Court and the Bluebird of Happiness. And then help us to do any more improvements, such as the Niece House. That's a county property, and they probably would need some signage if they are going to go
We've
after.
already put some there, some
Okay.
new signs. Mhm.
Okay. And anything else that we identify in the area moving forward, but that's going to be on an individual type, address by the board.
Okay, so staff can follow up, we don't need to take formal action, is what you've suggested for the Bluebird and the Haleys. This board doesn't need to take,
Well, you're certainly in your rights today to, as a group, to vote to have those listed as significant cultural resources.
okay?
I have a question now. So, if staff thinks they qualify, is staff going to now designate themselves, or do we need to make the action in order for them to get designated?
I
'Cause
think,
I know we don't have a coordinator, right? So you
Yes,
don't have.
we're,
Okay.
so what would happen is if you, as the board, vote to have them deemed significant cultural resources, that's on record. Then if anything would come in to impact those two resources, they've already been identified as significant, so they would have to have that cultural resource management plan and all of that would go with it. Staff typically does not react until we have an application. So what you, the board, would be doing is acting now because you have an individual here who is requesting something of you, the board.
Anyone want to make a motion along the lines of what we've discussed?
Well, who owns the Haley Court sign?
County.
Technically, the county.
Technically the county,
Yep.
because it's in the right of way?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I'd like to make a motion that
Okay.
we designate them as the specific or significant cultural resources, both Haley's Court sign and the Bluebird of Happiness.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
Public comment?
Yeah, I guess we do have public comment before we take any action.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm Ed Slavin, St. August Green. I just want to thank Ms. O'Hara for her excellent presentation. I've worked for 20 years on the Milano group. It's really very impressive. Also want to thank you for what you said about Mr. Astor, and we're hoping that he's going to be reinstated real soon. I've been in touch with our commissioners, and I've been in touch with other people, and I know other people here have been in touch. We have run off 4 cultural resources coordinators in a row. And it's a hostile working environment for First Amendment protected activity by county employees and people wanting to protect cultural resources. It borders dangerously on environmental racism. And I'm thinking that under Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, because so many of these places are African American or civil rights sites and protected places, the Justice Department could investigate if Mr. Asner is not properly reinstated. And I would ask that this board ask questions about it. And I'm very concerned, and it's in the email that I sent the board today, I'm very concerned that the phrase was used about if we designate cultural resources, it'll scare off developers. Our bread and butter in this county is historic and environmental tourism, and historic and environmental tourists spend twice as long and twice as much. And it's really short-sighted to think that we should just mow everything down in St. Johns County because State Senator Travis James Hudson wants us to do so. And that's not wrong. I mean, that's just absolutely wrong. It's corrupt, and people aren't supporting it. That's why Krista Keating Joseph was elected to the county commission. And the overdevelopment of this county has to stop. And I really appreciate the pictures that you presented documenting what's been done to Milano Beach. It's a lovely place. We fell in love with it. We visited here in '92 for the first time, moved here in '99, and everybody loves the history in St. Augustine and St. Johns County. And we've got to do all we can to protect it. So I want to thank your group and this group for all that y'all do, and we just need to speak out in favor of reinstating Mr. Asner and preserving and protecting employee rights to free speech, and be held inviolate against retaliation and just short-sightedness, just plain meanness. There's too much meanness in this county government, too much retaliation, too much hostile working environment, too much just serving developers as cat's paws. And that's what that election is about. And I thank you so much.
Okay, any other
I
comments?
just have a question, if I may. I have to leave shortly, but I was very interested in also listening to the details about the Hastings High School update. Is this by chance televised or recorded that I might go back later and watch?
We're actually taking that up after action on this, so I don't know when you need to leave.
I have about 5 minutes before I have to go, and there's no rush on your part.
It
I
is-
just
but
wanted to see
it
if
is
there's a way
recorded,
for me to.
correct?
Yes.
Our meetings are recorded, so
Okay,
if
is
you
it
have
possible
leave-
to get a
Yes.
copy emailed to me?
They're so large, I'm going to let Ryan speak to that. We usually put them out on a
On the YouTube, the county has a
Oh,
YouTube
perfect.
account.
Okay, so I can just email you and maybe get a link to that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
We need to videotape them, please. Put
Okay.
them on the web and on the county website.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. All in favor of this motion, the motion to designate these two Haley's Sign and Bluebird of Happiness? All in favor? Motion carried. Okay, now we will go back to item number 2, staff update on,
So the GAI recommendation was to kind of expand that historic district, so I think it's possible, I mean, we're a CLG, we could potentially get, try to get a grant to get more funding, just expand the survey and just see what's out there, just take her recommendation of that. I just put that out there, we could potentially do that.
Are you making a motion to do that?
And I'd be willing to help staff, because I wrote many grants for those, so I could help you all
this
write
would be a
them.
state grant through SHPO?
Yeah,
Okay,
to just get some extra money just to expand that area, what they're recommending.
okay, so your motion is to recommend to staff that we seek additional funding.
Well, I could help with the grant writing to try to receive a grant to help fund to expand the survey
You
as
are
recommended.
volunteering, so,
Yeah.
okay, so do we need a motion or not a motion? If you're gonna volunteer, it sounds like a great idea to expand, because I think there are some other.
Yeah, I mean, I can work with y'all and we can kind of figure it out.
I think a motion would be helpful because that then is providing some guidance.
Okay, I'll make a motion to, for staff to investigate applying for a grant to expand the Bolano Beach area after the survey. So the recommendation from GAI to expand.
Second,
Second.
motion made and seconded, all in
Oh.
favor?
Wait, could I?
I think
forgot what I was gonna say.
Do we need public comment on that, or is this all embedded in item 3?
What I was going to add is that we do that as quickly as possible because of the impending destruction of some of these buildings that would be contributing resources.
Oh,
So the
Yeah.
state grants, the cycle starts in the spring for the grants, and then the
Mhm.
funding is the next year.
Right, yeah,
So I don't know,
yeah.
if the timing,
I don't know either. But,
we can, I mean, at least we're trying to do something, right?
right. Let's see what we
Any
on there.
try? Okay.
Yeah.
okay, so we have a motion made and a second. Any public comment?
I support the motion.
Okay, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion carried. Okay, to item 2, staff update on Hastings High School. And this is a National Register property. One of just a couple National Register properties in the county.
Hi, so my name is Sarah Newell. I'm a grants and legislative analyst, work in administration. And Ryan invited me to give a brief update on the Hastings High School project. And he mentioned that at the previous board meeting, someone had inquired about it. So here I am. If you don't know, the board awarded provided $7.6 million to the school district to look into placing a campus of the First Coast Technical College in the old Hastings High School building. Now, the county, the commissioners did vote and award that money, and the school board has started to see how that could happen. At this stage, I can give you a couple of the steps that have happened thus far, but it has been, the project is in the hands of the school district. So I wanted to make that clear that at this stage, the county doesn't have any involvement, but I can tell you where the district is just because I'm in contact with the district about it. So we went out a couple months ago to look at the building. I had never been there before, and it was really, really lovely and a great experience. And I was just very, very interested. Even the papers that are in there, there's an old typewriter. So it was just a very interesting experience. I was appreciative to be included with that. I went with some staff from the school board and an engineering team as well went out there. And it was really just to get a quick look around. And then after that, the next step, the school district informed us that they were going to, staff at the district, informed us that they were going to meet with First Coast Technical College staff and find out when they bring them to look at the building and then have them vision what programs they could start with, right? So if they were to remodel the building, which again is their decision, then it would, they would want to remodel it in a way that they could deliver their programs. For example, one of the programs that's allowed by ARPA is childcare. They have childcare at their other campus, and so that's something they could consider having there. So if they went to look at the space and see, you know, what could we do now for a first phase? And my subsequent discussions with them, they are again trying to look at this same issue, what programs, because it needs to be narrowed down to a smaller scope at this time, because it's such a big building and a big project. And it will require the school district to put in money as well, because $7.6 million would not be enough to renovate the entire building. We do not know their plans. Their plans have not been presented to the board yet. Once First Coast Technical College and staff at the school district come up with their recommendation on what programs would go there, what would need to be renovated, or however else they plan to use that space, they would present it to the school district. And then the school board would make that decision on whether they're going to provide extra funding, whether they're going to even decide to renovate the building or not. So they do not have to accept the funds from the county and move forward with this project, but I know that they are very grateful, and it seems like a wonderful venture that we can engage in together to bring to the community. I'm sorry I don't have details on the plans for the building. It's just in its infancy. But it will be brought to the school board because the county's responsibility has finished at this point, because it's in the hands of the school district, since they will be, the First Coast Technical College is under the school district. So, and I'm happy to answer questions about how we got here, and it's still in its infancy, so I would suggest if you have more questions to go to the school board. I can say that the funds would have to be encumbered by December 2024. So I anticipate that they will be making some decisions or bringing it before the board in the spring, as they will have to take some quick action.
Has the property been deeded from the county to either the school district or First Coast at this point?
It has not. It has
Okay,
not.
so the county is technically still owner of
Correct.
the property.
Correct.
Who is doing the feasibility study to determine whether to retain the building or even proceed with the project?
That would be the school board is handling that.
Have they commissioned a feasibility study at this point?
I'm not aware if they have hired anyone. The last I spoke with their staff, they were still trying to vision what they could put there. I don't know that they have hired anyone
Okay,
because they needed the vision first of what programs they would want there, and then they would
yeah, doing
hire
the
someone.
program first,
'Cause it's
and then
very-
seeing whether the building meets the program.
But they, of course, will have to adhere to all of the requirements,
Okay,
the
but-
historical buildings.
So if the county still owns the building,
Yes.
I guess the question for the county is the building stabilized so it's not deteriorating at this point? Is that,
I don't know, would I need to speak with Katie maybe about that?
Right.
Okay.
Kate, I would speak with Katie.
Okay.
because that's sort
I
of
do-
number one for a
Okay.
historic property is,
Speak with you, I could hear.
The last,
is
yeah.
the building in a stable situation, or does it need some form of emergency repairs to simply keep it from being attacked by nature and destroyed that way? Because a lot of historic properties,
So
that's been their end.
I can definitely bring that to staff and ask them.
County staff, yeah,
Yeah.
that would be good. And others may have suggestions also, but it seems that issues that this board, I think, would be interested in would be that question, whether the what are the scenarios? I guess hearing from directly, maybe it's premature from the First Coast or the school district, a direct report, but since the building's still owned by the county, I guess the county is the one we're looking at. But the other thing is, I believe the county, since it owns the building, would have, and it is a National Register property, it would be, if the property is transferred in any direction, to have assurance that any work done on the building would conform to the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation of historic buildings. It's a requirement that if there were any federal funds going into this project or state funds, since it's a National Register district, that requirement would be imposed anyway. I believe that's correct. Is that correct?
Just federal funds?
The
If-
state
Unless it's a
doesn't-
local landmark, it's not a local landmark, right, it's just national.
The
So-
state doesn't recognize National Register properties?
So it has to be federal, so that will trigger the Section 106 review.
So
It has to be federal funds, it doesn't matter.
the state does not recognize that?
Not,
That's what-
no, not that I know of, it's
Ooh,
just federal.
okay, because most states do.
Yeah,
I thought Florida did.
I mean,
Did you ask council for that?
you can double check, but,
Please.
But anyway, Section 1, Secretary of Interior standards would be a very good attachment to deeding that historic landmark building, the National Register building, to anyone. It would give assurance that it would be followed.
Should we nominate it as a local landmark as well? Or local, whatever the terminology was, significant resource? That would at least protect it for a year, correct? Am I correct?
Well, because it is a landmark, a
Uh-huh.
national landmark, it
Right.
already qualifies it as a significant cultural resource. So the landmarking, remember, is at a higher level than significant cultural resource.
Okay.
So it would be a county landmark also?
If you're proposing to
Right.
designate it as a county landmark, whenever we have that potential, you would then vote to offer it up as that you wanted it as a county landmark. Then I would have to take that to the administration because the owner of the property has to agree to landmarking. I don't know that there would be a problem with that because it's already a national landmark.
Right.
Yeah, well, based on that, you're proposing it be
A county landmark as well, maybe.
designation.
Yeah, I don't know.
Would we change the nomination to, to ask staff to investigate whether the county would want it to be a landmark? Because then they'd have to do a COA every time they want to do any kind of work on the exterior. A local landmark is a little bit more, obviously higher level, so like any kind of change would have to go get a COA, and that's significant time from staff. So I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, but it's also additional protection.
It is
in a
protection.
sense. In a sense.
It is additional protection, and if the county then transferred it to any other party attaching that requirement, the Secretary of Interior's requirement. So,
Would it be possible to ask one question before we, I hate to interrupt. I'm sorry, I was just wondering, I wanted to make a comment actually as well. I've been kind of drawn into the town of Hastings because of what we're doing out there, and we've been asked by multiple property owners to start something similar to the Volano Main Street group nonprofit to help raise money for grants, and I've crazily taken on the task of trying to do that, but I'm very ignorant to the process. But we have a ton of people asking about Hastings High School, and I did find out there is an active leak, so the roof does need repair. But I also happened to, actually the roofer that put that roof on reached out to me and said that the roof is still very viable, just needs a new underlayment, and apparently the roof has tremendous value. The tiles are good for another 20, 30 years, he estimated. So it just needs another underlayment. So I don't know if that is something that can be looked at as possibly getting funding to put a new underlayment. It might help preserve, the interior better. But I just wanted to make that one mention, and I appreciate all of your time. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you for everything y'all are doing.
Where are we going?
Sure. I guess my point is, this could take time between the county transferring to the school board. And, we've been talking about this building for 4 years now?
Yeah.
3 years
Yeah,
at
we
least?
toured it 3
Yeah,
years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just don't want it to see it get worse and worse and worse due to neglect. And I think we should do anything that we can to prevent that.
Well, if I can offer up some,
Yeah.
this is the first I've heard of the roof leak, so we can definitely get with the county staff in charge of maintaining all of our structures to see about getting at least that abated. Again, it's a national landmark, so they would still have to do a whole lot of documentation and going through a process before they could do anything detrimental to that structure. I think the fact that the county offered up $7.6 million demonstrates the county is of the mindset to, move forward and do something to rehabilitate the structure. So maybe what we can do is get some more information, bring it back to provide you some additional details on maybe timing, where the school board is,
Yes.
that sort of thing would
That
help.
would be good. If we could schedule that for that'd be the February meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
That
Get
sounds
more
good,
information, further clarification on the implications of local landmark designation to go along with national landmark listing on the National Register. Good.
From the county's perspective.
Right.
Yeah.
That's important. We need to know what they're thinking.
And maybe some of the 7.6 million, a little bit of it can go into.
Just a little.
Doing
Fixing the roof.
Fixing the roof. Maybe 0.3 will fix the roof and keep the building secure for, okay, good. So February meeting.
February meeting.
Excellent. Okay. So we don't need to take any action other than that's going to go on the agenda on February. Okay.
Public comment?
Public comment? Okay.
Yes, I just wanted to point out on the Hastings High School feasibility study on May the 18th of 2020, and that was 938 days ago. 938 days ago. And that was 16 CRRB meetings ago. There was a final draft of the feasibility study concerning the preservation of Hastings High School, and it was presented at EQH. Since the submission of that report, the county administrator and staff have not shared it with the CRRB. They asked the staff to deny the existence of the report. And Mr. Trey Asner was instructed by the environmental manager, Ms. Jan Brewer, not to share the report with the CRRB after the board inquired about it at their April meeting. Mr. Asner was also directed to mislead the board if asked. When Ms. Brewer shared the report with Mr. Asner, he was told that the report was to be kept in-house. Why? At the October meeting of the CRRB, the board asked the county staff if there were any updates regarding Hastings High School. Again, county staff failed to inform the board of the feasibility study that was done 3 years ago. Why? Could we please have that discussion, colloquy, cross-examination, inquisition now? We really need to have the staff show dignity, respect, and consideration for our cultural resources and for this board, which consists of very talented individuals who are knowledgeable in the field. And we need to stop the retaliation, and we need to stop the lying. As Daniel Patrick Moynihan put it best, secrecy is for losers, for people who don't know the value of the information. And our Florida law, Article 1, Section 24 of our Florida Constitution, was enacted by vote of 3.8 million Florida residents back in 1992. That's 83% of us. 83% of the people who were living in Florida at the time. And I think the county staff, by running off 4 consecutive cultural resources coordinator, has shown its unfitness to protect cultural resources. We need a new county administrator. We need a new way of life here. I was honored to represent whistleblowers across this country, including nuclear weapons whistleblowers and nuclear power plant whistleblowers, and people in government agencies like EPA and TVA. And I have seldom seen a more hostile working environment directed against First Amendment protected activity than this one right here. And I think Ms. Brewer left the room, like the record reflects, she left the room without excusing herself. And I don't know what her position is. And I haven't heard any response to Mr. Asner's IG complaint, and I haven't heard any response to the concerns that I raised earlier and now. And I think it's totally disrespectful for staff to quote when somebody asks questions and demands answers. And that's how God made me. My parents raised me, and my mentors taught me. And we need to have answers from Ms. Brewer, please. Thank you.
Okay, so that's our public comments. And
Let the record reflect Ms. Brewer just returned after I made my public comment. She didn't want to.
So we're moving on to item 4. Item 4, update, staff update on Camrite House.
Yes, I have a quick update for that issue. So I spoke with the owner, Mr. Manaute, as well as TJ Jackson with the MLK Celebration Committee of St. Johns County. And I can read an email real quick, an update. They're continuing with the fundraising efforts on potentially relocating that structure. And so apparently there's a GoFundMe account. It's still active. They are planning a national push this week or next to bring more awareness to the fundraising effort. The Parks Foundation put together a grant application to be resubmitted to the federal grant program. We are waiting for the window to reopen to submit it. A few members of the community have volunteered to assist in making the move happen, the move of the building, that is. Donations are slow, but looks promising if there was more time for us to reach out to the prospective donors. Hopefully more positive results will be forthcoming in the next few weeks prior to the end of the year. So that was Mr. T.J. Jackson.
Good, good. Okay, any questions from the board on that? Call it proceeding. Any public comment on Camrite?
Well, I'd like to say something, I guess, since my words were already read. My name is T.J. Jackson, St. Augustine, Florida.
Yes, sir.
There's nothing I wanted to add specifically other than the fact that I did meet with the owner, myself, and a couple of consultants who were working with us, and we met with him on the 2nd of December, which was about 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago. And I understand that his concerns about his personal concerns about the property is that well, I'll put it like this. I asked him specifically what financial hardship would he encounter if we don't meet that deadline of January 1st and the hard deadline of March 1st. And he said really it's more of a personal financial, not personal, emotional, and not a financial. So I was hoping we can get more time. And I'm not sure if the cultural designation by this board I heard that it may be a year's time where nothing can be done to the property itself during that year's time.
I'm not sure.
I just wanted to find out when.
Yes, that property was designated as a significant cultural resource, but it was over a year ago that it carried that designation. I do know that, I think from our dealings with Mr. Minalte, he bought the structure because of its historic nature. So I'm not sure if your discussions with him would, carry more weight on delaying anything that happens to that structure to allow you more time to raise money.
Well, I think if we did have more time, it would be more fruitful. Although these past few months I've been involved with it, I pulled a couple of folks together to help work on it, and we got a plan now where I think we can get it done in phases, and that would require, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, which moving it, rehabilitating it, and then also setting it in place, but then it all hinged on being turned over to the county. And the Parks and Recreation is willing, as they said at the last meeting, will accept the structure, but the private funds need to move it. So that's where we are as far as trying to get those private funds together. And there's several individuals who we've identified that we are making efforts to reach out to, and that's ongoing as we speak. And of course, we're also waiting for the federal grant cycle to open back up. That's not a match type grant, it's federal funds that will come to actually to move the house, and then the county can get reimbursed for any money they spend on it.
Is that an NEH grant?
Yes.
What?
National Park Service.
Oh, National Park, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's great you're staying in communication with the owner. That's really good. And it's great that he has, an investment of emotion in it.
Well, he is really, I was surprised that he's invested that much in the story and about preserving it, and he's grappling with being pulled in two different directions. And I'm speaking for him, but he can speak for himself, but his family wants this, and he needs to do this, and then the community wants this, and so he's kind of in the middle. So we're trying to, hopefully it'll be a win-win-win outcome in the end, but it just needs more time.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Appreciate
I
that.
came today, I wasn't sure what I thought it was 3:30, but
1:30.
I found out it was,
Yeah.
oh, okay. All right, well, I wasn't misleading.
So that was done because there was no quorum last meeting and we had more items on the agenda. So we try to push it backwards so we can.
Okay, so next meeting will be 3:30.
Oh, I thought it was
No.
forever.
Actually, it's
It'll be
what's 1:30.
now.
It's 1:30 from now?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, sorry, thank you.
So if you have any other questions for me, I'll hang around a little bit. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions at this point? Appreciate the update again.
Just like to thank the county staff and Mr. Jackson and all the groups for working to preserve this wonderful building. And once again, I think the board needs to ask Ms. Brewer and Mr. Mouch about what
Okay, so we're going to move to item 5. Vote for officers. How do we do that? Just call for nomination, go down the list?
Yeah, you basically, let's see, I actually have the,
Start at the top with the officers?
yes. So the Cultural Resource Review Board shall elect a chair and vice chair, each of whom shall serve for 1 year, and until a successor is chosen unless otherwise provided for with respect to particular board committee. Staff support will notify County Commission office annually of the names of the members who serve as officers. The chair and vice chair serve at the pleasure of the majority of the board and may be removed and replaced at the pleasure of the majority of the full membership of the board. There's a method of election here. The chair and the vice chair shall be elected one at a time, beginning with the chair. The vote shall be via voce for each office, and the nomination serves as a motion. The nomination must be seconded. The different names shall be repeated by the outgoing or acting chair as they are moved and seconded. The vote shall be taken after the chair declares that nominations are closed and shall be taken on each nominee in the order in which they were nominated until one is elected by a majority of the votes.
Okay, well, outgoing chair calls for nominations for chair, and the pay is fabulous.
Well, I would like to nominate Robert Olson again as chair.
I'm the outgoing,
Yes.
so I don't know that I can serve another.
Are there term limits?
I think there are. It's 1-year term, and I think I've already served more than 1 year.
Regular appointments will be made for four-year terms. No member may serve more than 2 consecutive terms.
That answers your question. Nomination's still open for chair.
Nominate Nick.
Oh,
I
okay.
second.
Yes.
He's vice president, he served well.
Yes.
You
yes.
got voted.
We have a nomination, and we have a second of Nick. Any other nominees? Any other nominations? Okay. If there are no other nominations, the nominations are closed. So we're voting on the chair now. We are voting on Nick as serving as chair of the CRRB. So how do we vote? By hands up or?
Voice vote.
Yeah, voice vote.
Voice vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, Nick, congratulations.
So that now opens up the nomination for vice chair, which I was previously, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
So, again, does the outgoing chair handle that also? Okay, nominations for vice chair. Nominations
So
open.
we nominate Christine Newman
Oh, okay.
for
Okay,
vice chair.
I
yes.
second that.
Nominations of Christine and seconded. Any other nominations? I don't see any. All in favor of Christine being elected vice chair, signify by aye.
Aye.
All opposed? There aren't any. Christine, congratulations also. Okay, so we have our officers.
Question, when does that become effective?
Immediately.
I think it's at the term, at the beginning of the next.
Next meeting? Oh, okay,
They
okay.
have to change the,
Yeah, they got
Yes.
you.
Okay, so, yeah, okay. So we have 6 applications to fill 3 vacancies on the CRB. We were provided these in advance. Some of the actual applications are, one is from 2021. I had a question about on county letterhead. I was wondering how it's,
Some are like an electronic application, the others are the hard copy application. I think that's the difference between the two.
so the ones that are on county letterhead were transmitted in electronically?
Yes, I believe there's a form that you can fill out, so some may have filled that form out and some may have not. That's why there might be differences.
Okay. I don't know, I just had a couple of questions, and then we'll see what others have. I guess my overall question is, we have one of the 6, it looks like a absolute perfect match for this board. But some of the others don't seem to match up with the requirements. So how is that handled if they don't appear to have any connection with the work of the CRRB and the intention? How does the ordinance read as far as the qualifications? I guess that would probably be good to know.
Yeah, there's some minimum requirements here in the bylaws. Let's see here at the top, membership requirements. So,
Resident of the county.
yeah, you have to be residents. They have to be qualified through the demonstration of special interest, experience, or education in the preservation of cultural resources. All members shall, when possible, have practical and professional experience in one or more of the following fields: archaeology, architecture, or architectural history, curation or conservation, planning, professional engineering, real estate, history, historic preservation, or related disciplines.
So, discussion, questions? We have 3 slots. Do we have to fill all 3 one time, or can we fill?
Yeah, at this time we have the vacancy for District 3, District 5, and then 1 at-large alternate.
If you feel that you have candidates that could fill the 3 positions, it would be our recommendation to go ahead and nominate them so that we can get this to the Board of County Commissioners for approval, so that you can once again have a full board. But if you don't see any candidates that you feel meet the standards, then we can certainly go and re-advertise.
Well, we have Ms. Jordan, who's overqualified. So I would think that's one that we absolutely would put forward, but I'm not sure what others, people have other ideas.
Susan looked good.
Susan?
I was
the first one on
confused
there.
about that one, because I feel like she's applied for a while,
Okay.
and I was wondering if y'all had not chosen her for a reason, or...
Okay.
Just because I think we've had people with slightly better background.
Got it, okay.
Like you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because I felt like she's also very qualified for the
Okay.
board. The Janet and Susan, but the other 3 did not look qualified at all. They were like just checking a box of like, I want to just try all these boards. Whichever one chooses me, great.
Yeah.
I like diversity, but I don't know if you have no experience in cultural resources, it might not be great.
So we have 2 names.
You should vote on each one
I'll make
independently. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to appoint Janet, to recommendation for appointment for Janet and Susan, and the other 3 no.
Okay, we have a second for that nomination.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor of putting these names forward to the Board of County Commissioners? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, good. We'll be back good on
I
that.
was missing something with Susan, I was like, is she, I didn't read the first part. All right, good.
Okay, so we've completed item 5.
What districts do those fill? What
Oh,
districts are those individuals?
5 and 4.
Oh, in which one?
And are you for? Are you in District 4? Do you know?
I'm in District 5, and I was an alternate, and I'd like to just stay as an alternate.
Okay, so we're at item 5, to board member reports is the next item. Is that general reporting, reports
Yes.
and comments? Board member reports? Okay, I'll just, two things. I've really appreciated the, I would say, honor of serving as chair of this board for 2 years, and I'm very, very committed to the purposes of the Cultural Resources Review Board, and so thank you for allowing me to do that for the past 2 years. I do want to share something else. We had public comment at the beginning of the meeting on the sudden and unexpected departure of our Cultural Resources Coordinator from the county, and it is a matter of concern for me individually, as someone who cares about cultural resources and good staff people. I'll just say that I'm aware, I know that we have no role in human resources for the county. We are supported by whoever the county arranges to support us, but I thought that Mr. Asner displayed great professionalism and great commitment to our mission, and I was very puzzled, and I guess I'm looking for words to that he departed so quickly after he had been brought on by staff. I do think this board needs to be supported by professionally trained and resourced cultural resources coordinator. I know there are other roles in the county that that person needs to perform also. There's review of county developments for cultural resources. That expertise is certainly needed. And so I wanted to just make sure that those concerns were in the record. So, thank you. So we're going on to staff reports.
I have a comment before we do that.
Yes.
I was wondering with the passing of Commissioner Waldron, what's going to happen with this committee? Is there a new commissioner that's at large, or is there a
Yes.
vote?
We have already approached administration to assign you a new liaison.
And that liaison is Krista Joseph. I just got word right before the meeting by our county administration.
And Mr. DeJoseph is obviously a
Ms.
current Miss.
Miss Krista Joseph is our new county commissioner from that district, from Ponte Vedra District.
Okay, thank you.
I also would like to add to what Mr. Olson said earlier. I also was very distressed with what I've heard has happened, and would really appreciate and think it would be necessary for a person trained in cultural resources, either archaeology or historic resources, to be a staff person for this position, for the position that Mr. Asker left. We would encourage that to happen. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going on to staff reports. Any other staff reports at this point?
That's what I was going to report on, is the commissioner liaison.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
His thunder.
But that's very good.
Okay, so I guess we have adjourned. No other business?
Comment.